the women are dominant. And this bears repeating. Because most women around the world don't get to pursue sports. Either their countries don't value women's athletics, which is a huge part of it, or the country is so poor that women aren't able to have the leisure time to play soccer, right? All of these girls that are on the United States women's team, they played soccer their entire lives. Their families spent tens of thousands of dollars on elite training so that they could ascend to the highest level of soccer. That's the way soccer works. Soccer in America is very much of a rich person sport. Most of the rest of the world, soccer is very much of a poor person sport. But in the United States, soccer is the province of the elite and the highly educated by and large. In fact, they were just sharing the data on the average viewer of the World Cup. The average viewer of the World Cup household income is over $100,000 a year. That's unheard of. You may know that every time the U.S. men win, the U.S. women make money now because of a new, they
split the purse.
They do. They split the purse. And it's crazy because we got so much criticism. I'm sure you heard this, Buck, because the U.S. women said, we're not being fairly valued. We're not being paid enough. Most money that you make for being a member of the United States national team is based on the World Cup for soccer. And the women make a fraction of the money that the men make because the World Cup around the world, most people don't care very much about women's soccer. The United States actually the exception there. So they sued and they were angry. And this talking point that women are undervalued in sports has been out there for a long time, right? So they had this discussion on CNN. And Don Lemon, who is nobody's first choice for truth teller, dropped a truth bomb right in the middle of this conversation when he was like, the men are way better at soccer than the women are. Just listen to this conversation.
All right, I would make the exact opposite argument. I know everyone's going to hate me.
Go ahead.
But the men's team makes more money. If they make more money, then they should get more money.
Why does the men's team...
The men's team makes more money because because people are more interested in it.
But guess who takes part of blame? I have a big issue with this, guys. WNBA, same thing's happening to them.
There's also more interest in the
hold
NBA,
on. Until big media companies, big tech companies, advertisers invest and put them on their airwaves more and allow people and allow people to see it more and gain more fans, then you will push toward more quality. But if they are blocked in so many ways and not invested in as much, they don't even have a. I know you're not, but they don't even have a shot.
I grew up the only boy in a family of all women. I understand what you're saying, but not everybody, honestly, has the same skill. Not everybody has the same interest in the sport. I think the women should be paid more. I do. But if the men...
You're right that not everyone has the same skills because the women are better skilled.
Well, the women are better skilled against other women. But if the women played the men, they wouldn't be winning the way that they win.
Okay, I'm not going to get into I'm not even going to get into that argument.
I'm just saying, if the sport makes more money, that means there's more money available.
Why does it make more money?
Because people are more interested in it.
Because they see it.
When I go to a sports bar, guys, am I wrong? You guys don't want to say anything.
True.
When I go to a sports bar, if there is a women's basketball game on, I'm just being honest.
Which is on air less.
People will say, can you flip it to the guys? I don't want to watch this. I'm just telling you. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just speaking. What?
Harry, what were you going to say?
And so you cannot make people become interested in something that they are not interested in.
So Don Lemon is making a lot of sense. What's going on?
It's the exact same reaction I had. Because you get the chirp in, the women are way better than the men. Girl power, girl boss, like whatever. The women would get obliterated by the men. Now, the women are good at women's soccer relative to women. But, Buck, a 15-year-old boys team in Dallas beat our women's World Cup champion team. These are just like 15-year-old boys.
If you're talking about the speed the speed of the game, the ball and the players, women's World Cup soccer moves at and I coached high school soccer.
Yes.
Moves at the pace of a good high school men's team.
That's right.
That is the truth. That may not be that. And it's funny because, like, our audience knows this. Like, because if you listen to this show, you're a rational person who lives in reality. It's amazing, though, how much you can see the delusion can settle in, where people they convince themselves of something that's so obviously untrue that you look at them like, what are you talking about?
And by the way, the women are dominant, and this bears repeating, because most women around the world don't get to pursue sports. Either their countries don't value women's athletics, which is a huge part of it, or the country is so poor that women aren't able to have the leisure time to play soccer, right? All of these girls that are on the United States women's team, they played soccer their entire lives. Their families spent tens of thousands of dollars on elite training so that they could ascend to the highest level of soccer. That's the way soccer works. Soccer in America is very much of a rich person sport. Most of the rest of the world, soccer is very much of a poor person sport. But in the United States, soccer is the province of the elite and the highly educated by and large. In fact, they were just sharing the data on the average viewer of the World Cup. The average viewer of the World Cup household income is over $100,000 a year. That's unheard of. This is a super elite and wealthy sport in the United States, by and large. There are exceptions. But the reason why these women dominate is not because our women are better athletes than all the women around the rest of the world. It's because they have the ability to play and the wealth to pursue athletics in a way that doesn't exist in most of the rest of the world, which is actually a really interesting talking point that almost no one discusses.
And men's athletics, I guess we're going to go here. Men's athletics subsidize women's athletics across the board, even at the collegiate level, because of Title IX. So this is why at my school, for example, which was a little D3 school that nobody cares about athletically, the only sports that anybody went to watch in terms of the stands were football, basketball. There were some diehard hockey fans. That was basically it. But there was women's field hockey, women's lacrosse, women's name a sport, right? I mean, women's rugby. We had a women's rugby team. That was interesting. And there were no one watching these things, but the fields and the coaches and everything were subsidized by the rest of the athletics program. So we do have, and we kind of have sports socialism going on at some level, but it means you got a good women's team in the World Cup.
Yeah, women's athletics don't pay for themselves. And the argument that this started was one of the hosts on that CNN show was saying we don't give enough attention to women's athletics in this country. And that's because people don't watch it. Do you know who the biggest audience for women's athletics is? Men. Men, by and large, represent the majority of much of the fan base for women's athletics, too, because, and again, generalities, your wife or your girlfriend may love sports more than you do, but by and large, men consume overwhelming majorities of the audience in sports. And so the reason why women's athletes make less is because there's a lot less interest in their sport. You can't just manufacture it.
It sounds like you're trying to tell me that there may be some kind of a gender preference that men, as a general idea, watch more sports than women do. I don't know. This is groundbreaking, crazy stuff these days.
You know what?
Do you mean women and men have different interests for their leisure time sometimes? I don't know.
I'm going to even go a step further, Buck. One reason why men's sports are watched more, because men are bigger, stronger, and faster, and the games are more entertaining. Just tossing it out there, blowing up so many minds out there. The market responds to men's athletics. Like the WNBA players, and this is what's funny.
You don't like watching slow motion layups after lots of pick and rolls?
What we sold is this idea that athletes are woke. But I love it. Like, if you get any NBA player on the record and you're like, hey, the WNBA players say they should make the same salaries as you, they're going to be all of a sudden capitalists really quick. Well, wait a minute. Everybody watches us. Nobody watches them. We subsidize the existence of the entire WNBA. So, look, I want women to be able to excel in athletics. And remember, I'm actually speaking sanity here, one of the few voices who will. Men shouldn't be able to dominate women's athletics, which is what happens when you have these transgender athletes. But the argument of, oh, women deserve more money in women's soccer because they're better than the men is so laughably absurd that even Don Lemon called it out.
I mean, how far are we, you think, from some people on the left deciding that if like a 240-pound, 30-year-old man identified as like a seventh grader, that he could run around and just annihilate everybody in Pee Wee football. Like, you start to wonder, like, what are the outer limits of this? We have to make everyone's belief about themselves. We have to validate it in some way.
No,
I can picture like a 240-pound guy stiff-arming little 12-year-olds all over the field, just crushing them. And there will be commentators at MSNBC like he is living his truth.
Yeah. I mean, why can you not be trans age? I mean, if you can change your gender.
I don't know.
I mean, if you don't believe biology exists, and sometimes that things get wrong, like, why is chronological age a thing? Like, if I want to be trans age, like, I'm 43, if I felt like I was a 12-year-old boy, I could wreck 12-year-old boys basketball. Like, I would be double guy. Like, my son's in 12-year-old basketball right now. We played a scrimmage, dads against the kids the other day. I'll be honest with you. We could wreck them if we needed to.
I think people listening to this know a lot of guys who are trans age. They just don't want to come out and say it. They're like 55, and all of a sudden they go buy a Porsche Boxster. Maybe a used one. They get an earring. Maybe they get a tattoo somewhere.
There's
I think they think they're 25.
There's a lot of men's trans age dating. I'll tell you that. 55-year-old dude gets divorced. Next thing you know, he's got a 28-year-old girlfriend.
I think Leonardo DiCaprio has been getting a rough rap here for a while. Maybe Leo doesn't think he's 43. Maybe he's 24, like all the Victoria's Secret models that he dates.
He's trans age. I'd trot it out. I'd love to hear the reaction.
We just want him to live his truth.
Live your truth. Everybody needs to live their truth. Don Lemon. That's how crazy CNN is.
Dropping truth bombs.
Dropping truth bombs. Couldn't believe it. Props to Don Lemon. First time we've ever said that.